I never imagined that after spending my entire life building a future for my children, I would one day find myself sitting alone in a hospital hallway, wondering whether I could afford to stay alive. My name is Richard Walker. I'm 68 years old, a retired construction foreman, a widower, and a father of 2 children whom I loved more than my own life. 3 months earlier, my world had fallen apart. It started with constant exhaustion. Then came the stomach pain, the weight loss, and finally the diagnosis. Colon cancer. The doctor was calm as he explained everything. We caught it before it spread too far, Richard. Surgery has an excellent chance of curing it. I sighed with relief. Then he handed me the estimate. Even after Medicare and insurance, I still had to pay $3,200 before the hospital could schedule the operation. To many people, that wasn't much money. To me, it might as well have been $3 million. Since my wife, Margaret, passed away 5 years earlier, I had lived alone in the small house we'd bought 40 years ago. My pension barely covered groceries, electricity, and medication. Every month was a balancing act. There were no savings left. When Margaret battled Alzheimer's, every dollar we had disappeared into treatments and home care. I never regretted spending that money. Not for 1 second. She deserved every chance. But now, there was nothing left for me. That night, I stared at our old family photo hanging above the fireplace. There we were. Margaret smiling. My son Daniel wearing his high school football jersey. My daughter Emily, missing 2 front teeth and laughing so hard her eyes were closed. Back then, we were rich in ways money couldn't measure. Daniel had always been ambitious. Even as a teenager he dreamed about becoming a millionaire. I worked overtime every weekend so he could attend business school. When tuition increased, I sold my classic Mustang. He never knew. I simply told him I didn't enjoy driving it anymore. Years later he launched a software company. It exploded. Magazine interviews. Luxury cars. Private jets. A mansion overlooking the ocean. People called him a self-made billionaire. I smiled every time I heard it. Because I knew the truth. Nobody succeeds completely alone. Emily was different. She became an elementary school teacher. She never made much money. But every Christmas she still baked cookies herself instead of buying expensive gifts. She visited every Sunday. She called every Wednesday. She remembered birthdays. She remembered anniversaries. She remembered me. The following morning I picked up my phone. I stared at Daniel's contact for nearly 20 minutes. I hated asking for help. Especially from my children. Finally, I pressed call. Dad. His cheerful voice made me smile. Hey, son. Everything okay? Actually, I hesitated. I've been diagnosed with cancer. Silence. Then his tone changed. Oh my God. They can remove it, I said quickly. They just need to do surgery. That's good. The words caught in my throat. I need $3,200 before they'll schedule it. Another pause. Then. Dad. I hate asking. I know. I'll pay you back somehow. He laughed awkwardly. Dad, that's not really the issue. I frowned. What do you mean? We literally just closed a $12 million acquisition. I smiled. That's incredible. It is, but all our money is tied up. I only need $3,200. I understand. His voice became colder. But we're reinvesting everything. I felt my stomach tighten. There just isn't extra cash right now. I blinked. Had I heard him correctly? Dad. I have payroll. Investors. Taxes. Lawyers. It's complicated. I couldn't speak. I'm sorry. I wish I could help. We'll figure something out. Figure something out? My surgery depended on that money. He ended the call 5 minutes later. No promise. No transfer. No offer. Nothing. I simply sat in my chair staring at the silent phone. The boy I'd once carried on my shoulders. The man whose college dreams I'd financed. The millionaire whose success I celebrated. Couldn't spare $3,200 to save my life. That evening I skipped dinner. Not because I wasn't hungry. Because I couldn't stop crying. As the rain tapped softly against the windows, another call came. It was Emily. Hi, Dad. I forced a smile into my voice. Hey, sweetheart. You sound strange. I'm fine. No. She knew me too well. What happened? For several seconds, I couldn't answer. Then everything spilled out. The diagnosis. The hospital. The surgery. And finally, the conversation with Daniel. Millie didn't say a single word for nearly a minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking. Dad. I'm coming over. I had no idea that the knock on my front door the next morning would change my life forever. The knock on my front door came just after 8 the next morning. Before I could even reach the handle, the door swung open. Dad! Emily rushed inside and wrapped her arms around me so tightly I almost lost my balance. She held me for nearly a minute without saying a word. Then she stepped back and looked into my face. You've lost weight. I shrugged. I've been stressed. She wasn't fooled. You've been scared. I looked away. Maybe she was right. Emily set 2 grocery bags on the kitchen counter. I brought breakfast. You didn't have to. I know. She smiled. I wanted to. Within minutes the smell of scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh coffee filled the house. It reminded me of the mornings Margaret used to cook while the children argued over who got the last pancake. For a little while, everything felt normal again. After breakfast, Emily sat across from me at the kitchen table. So tell me everything. I explained the diagnosis, the surgery, and the hospital's payment requirement. She listened quietly, occasionally wiping away tears. Finally, she asked the question I had hoped she wouldn't. Did you call Daniel? I nodded. And? I forced a weak smile. He said his money is tied up. Emily stared at me. What? They just closed some $12 million business deal. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. He really said no. He apologized. Dad. No. She slammed her hand gently on the table. That's not an apology. I sighed. He's under pressure. Emily shook her head. Pressure doesn't make someone forget who carried them through life. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Then Emily quietly asked, how much do you need? $3,200. She looked down at her hands. I don't have that. I know. I've only saved about $2,000. I immediately smiled. Sweetheart, I'm not asking you. I know you're not. She stood up and walked toward the living room window. I've been saving for almost 4 years. For what? She laughed softly. A down payment. You deserve your own house. I can save again. No. I stood up. Absolutely not. She turned around. Dad. No. I won't let you give up your dream. My dream isn't a house. She walked over and held my hands. My dream is keeping my father alive. An hour later, despite every protest I made, Emily drove to her bank. When she returned, she placed a plain white envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was exactly $2,000. Every dollar she had saved. I looked at the cash, then back at her. I can't take this. You have to. You worked years for this. I can work a few more. Tears blurred my vision. I failed you. She looked shocked. What? You became a teacher. You've never had much money. And yet. I couldn't finish the sentence. Emily smiled through her own tears. You didn't fail me. You taught me something Daniel forgot. What's that? Family isn't measured by your bank account. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt hope. Not because I had enough money. I still needed another $1,200. But because I wasn't alone. That afternoon, Emily made dozens of phone calls. She contacted the hospital's financial assistance office. She spoke to social workers. She searched for local cancer charities. She even contacted her church. Watching her fight for me made my chest ache, not from illness, but from gratitude. She refused to give up. Late that evening, the hospital's financial counselor called. Mr. Walker? Yes. We've reviewed your case. Because your daughter has already paid $2,000, and based on your financial situation, the hospital foundation has agreed to cover the remaining balance. I froze. What? You owe nothing further. My knees nearly gave out. Emily grabbed my arm before I fell. They're paying the rest? Yes, sir. We've scheduled your surgery for Monday morning. The moment I hung up, Emily burst into tears. I hugged her tightly. You saved my life. She smiled through her tears. No, Dad. We saved it. 3 days later, I underwent surgery. When I opened my eyes in recovery, the first face I saw wasn't a billionaire's son. It was my daughter. She hadn't left the hospital once. She slept in a waiting room chair. Skipped meals. Ignored work. She was there every time I opened my eyes. Every single time. The surgeon walked into my room the next morning with a smile. We removed all of the cancer. It hadn't spread. If recovery goes well, your prognosis is excellent. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to believe I had a future. I didn't know then that my greatest battle wasn't with cancer anymore. It was with the painful truth about my own family. Because only 6 days after I came home from the hospital, a black luxury SUV pulled into my driveway. Daniel stepped out. His face was red with anger. He slammed the car door so hard the windows rattled. Without even saying hello, he marched toward my front porch. And the first words out of his mouth made my blood run cold. Emily stole something that belongs to me. Daniel didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed past me and stormed into the living room, still wearing his expensive tailored suit. The scent of an expensive cologne filled the room, but it couldn't hide the bitterness in his voice. Where is she? I frowned. Who? Emily. She's in the kitchen. Before I could stop him, he marched down the hallway. Emily looked up from washing the breakfast dish. Yes, surprised to see him. Daniel? He threw a folded piece of paper onto the counter. You had no right. Emily looked confused. What are you talking about? My inheritance. The room fell silent. I stared at him. Inheritance? Daniel looked at me. Don't act like you don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about. He laughed sarcastically. Oh, come on, Dad. The lawyer called me yesterday. What lawyer? The family attorney. He said Mom updated her will before she died. My heart skipped a beat. What? Daniel pulled another document from his briefcase. Emily convinced him to keep it hidden. Emily's eyes widened. What are you talking about? I haven't spoken to any lawyer. Liar. He slammed his fist onto the kitchen counter. You manipulated Dad while he was sick. I did no such thing. You knew Mom left that old lake property to both of us. I blinked. The lake property? Margaret's parents had owned a small cabin beside a quiet lake nearly 50 years ago. After they passed away, it had remained untouched. The cabin was old. The roof leaked. The dock had collapsed years earlier. As far as I knew, it wasn't worth much. Daniel pointed at Emily. "You got Dad to sign papers giving it to you." Emily looked horrified. "I've never asked Dad to sign anything." "I don't believe you. I've been at the hospital every day." "Exactly. You had plenty of time." I finally raised my voice. "Enough." The room became quiet. I looked directly at my son. "I haven't signed a single document." Daniel stared at me. "You haven't?" "No." His confidence faded for the first time. "Then why did Mr. Harrison call me?" I frowned. "Our old lawyer." Daniel nodded. "He said there had been activity involving the property." Emily crossed her arms. "Then why don't we ask him instead of accusing me?" Daniel hesitated. For the first time since arriving, he looked uncertain. That afternoon, all three of us drove to the office of George Harrison, the attorney who had handled Margaret's estate years earlier. The elderly lawyer welcomed us into his office with a puzzled expression. "I wasn't expecting all three of you." Daniel spoke first. "You called me." "Yes. You said someone was transferring Mom's property." Mr. Harrison nodded. "I did." "So who was it?" The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "It certainly wasn't Emily." Daniel turned toward his sister. She looked just as confused as I was. "Then who?" Mr. Harrison opened a thick file cabinet and removed an old folder labeled Walker Family Estate. He placed several documents on the desk. The transfer request came from a real estate development company. "A company?" "Yes. They offered nearly $2.8 million for the lake property." My jaw dropped. "What?" "The county recently approved a luxury lakeside resort. Your family's land is now extremely valuable." None of us spoke. For decades that little cabin had been nearly worthless. Now it was worth millions. Daniel slowly sat down. "So, nobody stole anything?" "No. The property is still jointly owned by Richard, Daniel, and Emily according to Margaret's will." Daniel's face turned pale. He had accused his sister of stealing millions, when she had actually emptied her own savings account just to save their father's life. Mr. Harrison looked at Daniel. "I also need to clarify something. The transfer request was rejected because your father must personally approve any sale." I looked at the papers. "So nothing has happened?" "Nothing." Daniel lowered his head. For the first time in years. He looked ashamed. The drive home was painfully quiet. No one spoke. When we arrived, Daniel finally broke the silence. He looked at Emily. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry." Emily didn't answer. "I was wrong." Still nothing. "I accused you of something terrible." Emily quietly looked at him. "You didn't accuse me because of evidence. You accused me because you believed money mattered more to me than family." Daniel couldn't respond. Because deep down, he knew she was right. But what none of us knew was that the shocking truth about the lake property was only the beginning. The next morning, another letter arrived. And hidden inside it was a handwritten note from Margaret, written just weeks before she passed away. A letter none of us had ever seen. A letter that would force Daniel to confront the one thing no amount of money could ever buy. The envelope was old. Its edges had turned yellow, and my name, Richard, was written across the front in Margaret's familiar handwriting. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I hadn't seen her handwriting in 5 years. Mr. Harrison had found the envelope tucked inside the original estate file. Somehow, during the chaos after Margaret's funeral, it had never been delivered. The note on the front simply read, "Please give this to Richard after everything has settled." If Daniel and Emily are with him, let them hear it too. I looked at my children. Daniel sat quietly on the couch, avoiding everyone's eyes. Emily reached over and squeezed my hand. "Read it, Dad." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. "My dearest Richard, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer beside you. That thought breaks my heart, but it also gives me peace because I know the kind of man you are. You spent your entire life putting our family first. You worked overtime when your back hurt. You skipped buying new clothes so the children could have better ones. You sold your Mustangs so Daniel could finish college." I stopped reading. Daniel looked up sharply. "My Mustang?" I nodded slowly. "You always wondered why I sold it. I told you I was tired of fixing old cars." Daniel's face went pale. "You sold it, for me." I smiled sadly. "There wasn't enough money for your tuition." He stared at the floor, speechless. I continued reading. "Richard, I know you'll never tell the children everything you've sacrificed. That's why I'm writing this letter. Daniel, if you're hearing this, I hope success has never made you forget where you came from. Money is a wonderful servant, but it is a terrible master." Daniel wiped his eyes. "Emily, thank you for always noticing the little things. Thank you for calling just to ask how we're doing. Never let the world convince you that kindness is weakness." Emily quietly cried. Then I reached the final page. My hands shook. "Richard, I need you to promise me one thing. Never divide our children with money. If one of them ever values wealth more than love, don't punish them. Teach them. Because people can lose fortunes and earn them back. But once they lose their family, they may never recover it. I love you all. Forever. Margaret." Silence filled the room. No one moved. No one spoke. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Then, for the first time since he was a little boy, he cried. Not quietly. Not politely. He sobbed. "I'm sorry." His voice broke. "I'm so sorry." He looked at me. "Dad." I became everything Mom warned me about. I didn't answer. He didn't deserve easy forgiveness. Not yet. Daniel stood and walked toward the window. I kept telling myself I was building this incredible life. I thought making more money would solve everything. He laughed bitterly. And while I was celebrating a $12 million deal, he turned toward me. My father was wondering if he could afford cancer surgery. His words hung in the air. "I can't believe I did that." Emily finally spoke. "You didn't become cruel overnight. You stopped calling. You stopped visiting. You stopped listening." Daniel nodded. "You're right. I missed birthdays. Anniversaries. I even forgot Mom's memorial last year." Every word was true. He reached into his briefcase and placed a folder on the coffee table. "I don't deserve another chance. But I want to earn one." Inside was a cashier's check. Not for $3,200. Not for $200,000. It was for $1 million, made payable to me. I pushed it back toward him. "I don't want your money. I know. I don't expect you to. I brought it because I thought money could fix what I'd broken." He looked at Emily. "But Mom's letter reminded me." "It can't." He slowly tore the check into pieces. The scraps drifted into the wastebasket. "I'll earn your trust the hard way." That evening, Daniel stayed for dinner. For the first time in years, the three of us sat around the same table. There were no business calls. No meetings. No phones. Just family. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences. Painful memories. Tears. But there was also something we hadn't shared in a very long time. Hope. As we finished dessert, Daniel looked at me. "Dad, there's something I need to tell both of you." The seriousness in his voice caught our attention. "What is it?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "The company I built. I'm thinking about walking away from it." Emily and I exchanged stunned glances. What Daniel revealed next would change not only his future, but the future of our entire family. None of us expected Daniel's words. He looked exhausted, as if the weight he'd carried for years had finally become too much. "The company I built," he took a deep breath, "is no longer the company I dreamed of." Emily folded her arms. "What do you mean?" Daniel looked at both of us. "When I started the business, I wanted to create something that would make you proud." He looked at me. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped measuring success by the people I loved. I started measuring it by numbers. Revenue. Investments. Acquisitions. I convinced myself I'd have time for family later." He lowered his head. Later almost came too late. For several moments, no one spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "You don't have to quit your company." Daniel looked surprised. "You don't?" I shook my head. "I never wanted you to be poor. I wanted you to remember where home is." Those words seemed to hit him harder than any accusation ever could. Over the following weeks, Daniel began making changes. Real changes. Not the kind announced in press releases. The kind no one else could see. He started visiting every weekend. Sometimes he'd mow my lawn before I even woke up. Sometimes he'd cook dinner. Other times we'd simply sit on the porch with 2 cups of coffee and talk about life. No phones. No business meetings. No distractions. Just father and son. Slowly, the distance between us began to disappear. One Saturday morning, Daniel surprised both Emily and me. "I've already spoken with my board of directors." Emily looked confused. "About what?" "I'm stepping down as CEO." "What?" "I'll remain a shareholder, but someone else can run the daily business." He smiled. "I've spent years building a company. It's time I rebuild my family." Emily stared at him for a long moment before quietly saying, "I've been waiting years to hear that." A month later, the 3 of us visited the old lake property together. The cabin was exactly as I remembered. The roof sagged. The porch creaked. The old oak tree still stood beside the water. Daniel looked around and smiled. "So this place is worth nearly $3 million. I laughed. "Apparently." He shook his head. "I don't want to sell it." Emily looked surprised. "You don't?" "No." He turned toward us. "This isn't land. It's where Mom taught us to fish. It's where Dad built that tree swing. It's where we roasted marshmallows every summer." He smiled sadly. "If we sell it, we'll make money. But if we keep it, we'll keep our memories." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I agree. I couldn't have been prouder." Instead of selling the property, we restored it together. Every weekend became another chapter in healing. Daniel repaired the dock. Emily planted flowers around the cabin. I painted the porch. Neighbors often stopped to watch us laughing together. None of them knew that only a few months earlier, our family had nearly fallen apart. As my health improved, my doctor gave me the news I'd been praying for. "Richard." He smiled as he reviewed my latest scans. "You're cancer-free." I closed my eyes. For a moment, all I could think about was Margaret. "I wish you were here," I whispered. That Christmas, for the first time since Margaret's passing, the house felt alive again. Emily baked her famous cinnamon cookies. Daniel insisted on cooking the turkey. He burned it slightly, and we laughed harder than we had in years. After dinner, Daniel stood and handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was an old set of car keys. I looked at him, confused. "What is this?" He smiled. "Come outside." Parked in the driveway was a beautifully restored 1967 Ford Mustang, the same model I had sold decades earlier to pay for his college tuition. I was speechless. "I spent months tracking it down," Daniel said. "I know it can't repay what you sacrificed. But I wanted you to have a piece of your past back." I wrapped my arms around him. This time, neither of us held back the tears. Before the evening ended, Emily raised a glass. "Mom used to say that families aren't perfect. She said they're strongest after they've been through storms together." Daniel nodded. She was right. I looked at both of my children and smiled. Cancer didn't save my life. My daughter did. And my son's willingness to change gave me back the family I thought I'd lost. Outside, snow began to fall softly, covering the yard in white. For the first time in many years, my heart felt completely at peace. Because in the end, I learned that the greatest inheritance a parent can leave behind isn't money, property, or success. It's the values that guide a family back to one another, even after they've lost their way.